Good morning, President. Good morning, General Secretary. Good morning, Convention. And what a pity, here we are 2 years in a row and we're not physically together. But it's great to see the large attendance and the huge level of interest in this critical convention, really, as we are in our second year of the pandemic with all the attendant problems. So it's my pleasure every year to I suppose, open up the education section of the convention programme to make some general observations really on the issues which are affecting the education sector and in particular the work of the Education Committee. One of the highlights of our convention last year was the fact that we were able to provide back to you, the members, the activists, feedback on the very rich information you gave us as regards your experiences of remote teaching. And indeed, this feedback has stood the test of time. We have been able to use it again and again in our advocacy around the planning for the return to school or remote teaching and learning. But more particularly when our President and General Secretary are sitting at those daily, weekly meetings with the other stakeholders and making the case for what teachers are saying that they need and what the system needs to provide. So in a moment, when our great AVC team here get it up live, I will be able to take you through the results of the research we did this year in advance of convention, which is focused on the theme of recovery. What do we need in our education system? What decisions does the government need to take in order to ensure that our system never ever hits these problems again, that we're building resilient school communities? However, before I do that, and just to give the technical team a moment, I just want to draw your attention to what I feel are some of the key kind of, how shall we say, pointers you can just keep the first slide there, Craig, that'll be great, thank you. To come back to the handbook, some of the key pointers in, I suppose, future directions in education policy, which we need not only to be concerned with, but to be very, very wary of. As you know, of course, and you received a presentation on this last year, one of the key areas of ongoing change in education at the moment and discussion is the senior cycle. The NCCA had a consultation process which culminated in a public consultation in November 2019. Needless to say, the year 2020, it trundled on. The NCCA Council will be very shortly signing off on a final set of advice to the Minister on what should happen at on its recommendations for senior cycle. But in the meantime, the Department of Education and the OECD and the NCCA commissioned the Policy Implementation Unit of the OECD to provide background on what it felt should be the key areas for a successful implementation of a revised senior cycle programme. And I think the fact that the system focused on successful invitation is very much an indication of the disquiet and learning that went on in the system by the vociferous and sustained opposition of you, the ASTI members, and to be fair to them, of course, the other teachers' union for a period, and the teachers in opposition to some of the most shall we say, unpalatable dimensions of proposed changes at the junior cycle. So if you look at page 74 of the Convention Handbook, you'll see a very short summary of the key messages from the OECD. My reading glasses. It indicated we have some very highly functioning aspects of our education system, namely motivated students, one of the highest retention rates in the world of 93% of young people completing second level education. We have a very significant degree of public trust in the education system, including the final externally assessed Leaving Cert exam. It noted that the latter is very much embedded in the cultural norms of Irish society. Indeed, it predates the formation of the state, 1912. And of course, the whole area of Leaving Cert has never been, the curriculum at senior cycle has never been static. Subjects are being continually updated. However, the three particular areas that the OECD identified that needed development was we need to look at the role of the Leaving Cert as the transition point to higher education. And of course, this is an area which has been well identified in all of the literature. Indeed, our CEC motion most recently identify that area. The OECD report is suggesting we need a far more rigorous, this is their terminology, rigorous and attractive vocational education pathway at senior cycle. We also need to focus more on equity. Equity sometimes is a second, is kind of an add-on to the education debate. And the OECD has highlighted that we need to emphasise equity as being at the core of all of our discussions on education. And indeed, as I move on now to our survey, you will see that equity is at the very heart of it. And finally, and this is something, of course, which the ASTI has repeatedly made the case, stakeholder consultation engagement from the word go is absolutely essential to effective implementation of education policy. And I think we have seen the role of the stakeholders in education over the last number of months in terms of ensuring the reopening of schools, in terms of assuring the safety of teachers and students, and in making sure that we have a school leaving examination for our young people. But there is a danger there. Not all stakeholders have the same responsibilities. Not all stakeholders have the same duties and accountability. And I really do feel that the teaching profession must continue to insist on its preeminent role in this consultation process. And I know many of you will want to speak on this issue later as we move on to the education agenda and we talk about specific issues like the Charter for students, for parents and students. So, President, I'm going to move very quickly then, not take up too much time, through our survey, which we commissioned in advance of convention. We almost had, if you move to the next slide there, I'll get my figures right, Craig. We almost had our I think it was just under 3,000 respondents. Yes, 2,000, what was it there? 2,527, which is a huge response rate. I mean, most surveys we've done in the past have been under the 2,000. So thank you, Accordia agus a Lucky. It's really, really important that we are able to get your feedback and to get your voice heard. So the research objectives were to gather data on your priorities for building resilient school communities in the post-pandemic period. And we looked at how you feel we should be doing that over the coming months. We can move on to the next slide. So teachers' working profile, as you can see there, that most teachers have full-time hours, but we can see the huge disparity, permanent contracts rather, but we can see the huge disparity that exists there in terms of the situation of newly qualified teachers, where slightly over a third of newly qualified teachers, which we define as those with 5 years or less employment experience, have permanent contracts. You can see we've put in the 22 hours there. We know you have this 40 minutes professional time, but most teachers are working full timetables, and this is something which is absolutely coming back to us big and strong in all of our research, the workload of teachers and in very many ways the unsustainability of that workload. 37% of teachers have unpaid roles outside the schedule of post responsibilities. This is slightly up on the percentage we had last year, and indeed is a matter for concern, because what it is demonstrating is that there are significant areas of school organisational and administrative work which cannot and are not comprehended by the limited number of posts of responsibility, and instead are being delegated in an ad hoc, indeed untransparent manner, and more significantly of all, an unpaid role for very many members. And I know this is something which the section in the convention agenda on leadership will be looking at later on. So we can move then to the next slide. Okay, so we asked teachers what areas what areas across a number of domains, we asked you, our members, what areas you felt we really should focus on in terms of supporting your work in the classroom teacher. And really what's extraordinarily significant about this is class size. For the first time in very many years, ASTI members are making it loud and clear that class size is an absolute priority for future investment. Class size combined with time to do your work and combined with reduced workload are the key priorities to support your work going back into what we hope will be mainstream normal schooling. When we did our research on teachers' workload 2 years ago, we discovered that teachers were working 40 plus hours per week. Where are those additional 18 hours coming from? Over 60% of those additional 18 hours are coming from preparation for classroom teaching, which underlines how complex, how dynamic, and how demanding classroom teaching is, the preparation in advance of the classroom and the marking and the preparation for the next day's or the next week's work. So this is what the teachers are telling us. We need to reduce the class sizes, and this is an absolute, I think, has to be a priority for us for going forward. We can move to the next slide then. So we looked at, obviously the shift to remote teaching and learning has been absolutely critical aspects of teachers and students' lives. And in the research you provided to us last year, and again it's coming through this year, the whole area of access to digital devices which are suitable for learning with is absolutely critical. I think this online important it is that going forward we need to talk about equity in terms of financing to ensure that all students have access to the devices which enable them to learn efficiently. You know, in this, as we move into a world which we're talking about, artificial intelligence, the fourth industrial revolutions, whatever the terminology we give to the future, it is going to be digitally based, digitally shaped. And unless we have a democratic understanding that access to digital technology, broadband devices and the skills, we cannot talk about an equality or democracy. And I think that's very much the messaging that teachers are saying, is that students need these devices as an essential part of being able to learn and to be able to engage in education in the contemporary world. And of course, the whole area of skills for digital learning, that's absolutely central. Irish students are top in the world, we top all the leagues in the world for social media, and that, you know, has a hugely positive dimension. But on the other hand, Irish student skills in terms of software for learning, accessing information, using software to create shall we say, homework assignments, etc. I'm afraid our student skills would be among the average within the EU. And this is an area I think that we have to look at into the future. And of course, laptops for teachers are another key area. In the research we did last year, something like only 62%, I think, of teachers had been provided with a school laptop device before March 2020. In other words, teachers were using their own devices once the school shut, and you had to retreat to the home environment and work from home. And this, of course, caused incredible problems for very many of you teachers, and it's something which has to be addressed. So I'm not at all surprised, in fact, that they are the top three priorities. They have been consistent, not just in our research, but in the research conducted by the Trinity, for example, and in UI Maynooth. We can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so the whole area of mental health and student well-being has, of course, been one of the most, shall we say, important reference discourses in the media, among parents, among the public health professionals, and indeed right across society at every level, especially within family level, on the well-being of young people and how they're coping during this period of extraordinary constriction of their lives and indeed global uncertainty. And one of the key priorities that has emerged from teachers is the whole area of access to external mental health services. There is, as you know, a huge shortage and a dearth of these services for our young people, and teachers are incredibly conscious of the need that we have to be able to get timely access to students who are presenting with problems. It is no longer adequate for the Department of Education to suggest that the guidance counselling service in schools can cope with all of the diversity of the challenges, which are both psychological, emotional, behavioural, and indeed educational into the future. So we need to build up as a society our external mental health services to make sure that all young people have access to the services that they need, not just now in this extraordinary post-pandemic period, but into the future. And indeed, this area of lack of access to external services is really critical. Colleagues, I should say, I know I'm racing through a little bit of this and I'm going to finish shortly so that you, the delegates, have time to engage with the issues, but this research is up on our website under curriculum and research. You will be able to see all of the data, etc. And we'll just move on to one or two more slides and then I'll conclude, President. I understand that we have a wider agenda to move on. So the whole area of school leadership, as you know, all of the literature identifies that school leadership, quality school leadership is central to quality education. We ask the teachers what do they feel makes for quality and effective school leadership. And the top issue that are identified here by teachers are communication and consultation. And we were very careful in the way we nuanced this question because, of course, sometimes with the best will in the world, communication can go wrong or consultation can be inadequate. So, but I think the message is absolutely unequivocal. Into the future, we must be mindful of the need, and school management should be supported to ensure that not just the quality of communication, but also the nature of consultation is effective and respectful. And of course, you can see there in the next slide, we will see in terms of looking at, sorry, we might just move on one there, please. Yeah, teachers' well-being. Obviously, quality of communication is identified by teachers as being essential to their well-being, and we can see why. When you're in a workplace, you have to have dignity at work, you have to feel that you are affirmed, you have to feel that you're not put upon, and you have to feel that that core value of teachers, your autonomy, your professional autonomy, your capacity to make judgments about the work that you do, that is strongly respected. And I think these are the messages that's coming through. I think what's very important in this slide here, President, is the fact that our teachers, like indeed very many workers throughout the country, are talking about the right to disconnect. One of the key messages that came to us in our research of teachers' experience of remote teaching last year was the fact that they were inundated day and night, 7 days a week, with emails and communications from their pupils, but also from parents and in particular from school management, with important emails being issued over the weekend with an expectation that the tasks set out on those emails would be ready for delivery on Monday morning. So I really do feel, and I know that our Health, Safety and Welfare at Work Committee is in the business of producing an important policy document for future negotiation and discussion around the right to disconnect. President, I am aware there are one or two more slides, but perhaps I should finish there in terms of giving the rest of the Education Committee a chance to get on. And just to conclude, thank you, President, and thank you, Convention, for giving me this opportunity to be able to communicate what you have told us, to communicate it back to you. I think it's really, really important that you see that when we ask you for your views, we act on it, we make sure it's documented, and we use it in terms of all of the negotiation, the advocacy, the campaigning, and the hard work that's conducted on your behalf by the President and the General Secretary. So thank you, President, and I shall be available to take any questions later on.